Today's topic is one of the really big ones in cybersecurity and something you really need to understand. It is, what is encryption? So encryption is part of cryptography, which is part itself of cryptology. We'll talk about those in different videos, but the key thing we want to talk about here is encryption. And encryption is a way of managing the property of confidentiality. It can provide integrity as well. We'll come to that. But the key thing here is confidentiality. You've got some data you don't want other people to be able to look at, or other systems to be able to look at. So there are four key parts to encryption. The first one is the plain text. That is the thing you're trying to protect. It's plain text that anyone can read. And the next one is the ciphertext. That's where you want to get to. You want to have text, or let's say text isn't always correct. Let's say bits and bytes, but basically data that other people can't read, that is confidential, has the property of confidentiality. To get there, you need to use a cipher. A cipher is the mechanism by which you turn the plain text into ciphertext. And typically you're going to have one or more keys, cryptographic keys, associated with that cipher. We'll go into all the details about these in later videos, but the key things are you use encryption to get from a plain text to a ciphertext with a cipher which is likely to use one or more keys. Now, of course, at some point you're probably going to want to be able to decrypt that. So decryption is just the opposite of encryption, and you decrypt your ciphertext to the plain text with the cipher, again, typically using a key. Now that key may or may not be the same key that you use to encrypt, and we'll get to that as well. Asymmetric encryption, that's not the case. Symmetric, it is the case. But those are the steps from ciphertext to plain text. That's what you do when you're decrypting. Now, there are many ways of doing encryption, many different ciphers. Some are more secure than others, and some are secure from different types of attack. And there are different ways you might attack these, and we'll talk about some of those on other occasions. But let's say, for instance, you only have access to a ciphertext. Then, well, what are you going to do? You have to try and find mechanisms to get back to the plain text. Maybe you've got multiple different versions of the ciphertext from the same cipher, but with different keys. Well, there are different attacks there. We'll cover all of these again later on. But encryption is the idea that you can take plain text and make it confidential using these techniques. And I mentioned also that often you get integrity protection. Now that's not always the case, not the case for all ciphers. Remember, ciphers are the thing you do, the mechanisms to get from plain text to ciphertext and then back to plain text. But in some, particularly a lot of modern ciphers, they also provide you with integrity, which is one of the CIA triad, of course. Now availability, well, that's rather a different thing. Only available if you have access to the ciphertext and a cipher with which you can decipher and any associated keys. So the CIA triad, well, not so much. We get the C, that's the whole point of encryption. Sometimes we get the I, A, not really so much. So now you know what encryption is. It's a basic underlying concept in cybersecurity, and if you get this, you've really got a big way forward to understanding and getting into cybersecurity. We can talk about lots of different ciphers, and we will. Vignere cipher, Enigma, Caesar cipher, asymmetric cryptography, symmetric cryptography, homomorphic encryption, quantum cryptography. all of these really interesting things to talk about. We'll talk about entropy and randomness and the importance for keys. We'll talk about the length of keys. We'll talk about different types of attack. These are all part and parcel of what encryption is and why it's important to understand it well. But if you understand this basic concept, you've got a good start. If you've got any other questions about any of these topics, if you want to know more about some of the things I've just mentioned, get in touch. Subscribe to the channel and I'll do what I can to help explain. Look forward to seeing you.